What's going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today we're going to talk to you about Polestar. Give you a quick overview of some of the current data points, what's really moving Polestar, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So currently Polestar is down 3.33%, and the market has been open about 45 minutes, give or take, or half an hour, and 459,000 shares have been traded. 2.4 is the average. So a fair amount of volume. And today's sell-off, we have Tesla to thank. So over this past weekend, they've been cutting the prices of FSD, many of their vehicles. So it just shows a very underlying broken company, especially if you kind of add on the fact that they recently did lay off a ton of staff. It just sucks. And whatever happens to Tesla, good, bad, or the ugly, does trickle down to other companies. You do see, for instance, Rivian getting bought up. And so this is hands down the biggest difference between many of the other EVs and Polestar. As I've said in the past, nobody likes Polestar. Even just looking right here, as far as the institutional purchasing or the ownership, you do see about 22 million shares is being held by institutions, 222 million by strategic entities, and then 222 by other, aka retail. So that is night and day difference from Rivian. So Rivian, this is what it looks like when institutions are and do believe in your company, whereas Polestar is just nothing. Nobody's doing jack all. And so it's very unfortunate. Plus, I guess Polestar in among itself has been crappy because based on their Q1 numbers, that is just absolutely horrific. So if maybe their numbers were a little bit better, they'd get a lot of attention from institutions. But right now, the only ones really interested in Polestar is shorts. So it is not necessarily the best. And plus, I was kind of reviewing a lot of the stats over the weekend for Polestar, in fact, and I did notice that their Altman Z score right here was negative 0.83%. So typically any company below, I think it's like 1.5, does mean that they most likely will be heading towards bankruptcy. And I think a lot of us do realize that Polestar is lagging even in their prime, which was probably mid last year when they were really kicking ass on production and everything. They were burning through a lot of money, and most likely it was going to be probably mid to late 2025 for profitability. So in reality, now the circumstances, especially based on Q1 numbers, if they do continue this trajectory of just poor performance, then yes, they are probably just going to be burning so much money. So I think Polestar is just a very interesting case, and it would be a 180 if they did have institutions that were willing to buy it. But still, I think a lot of people maybe are just anticipating for this just to be down the whole reverse stock split route. And oddly enough, it is getting very close to that with a $1.31. So any company trading roughly around $1, this is where they start to think on reverse stock splits. And like I said, the only one interested in Polestar is shorts. So of the 400,000 shares being traded so far, 185 is done by shorts. 10.61% of the free float is being shorted. 26.17 million shares overall are being shorted. So this company, oddly enough, isn't that even heavily shorted. Just what does typically happen is shorts swing trade it. So they're basically the only volume, as crazy as that sounds, despite only almost like 11% of the free float being shorted. Utilization is 99.61, short score is 93.37, and then cost to borrow average is 155.5%. So as I've said in the past, Polestar, if you kind of look at these numbers in among itself, then yes, it is a squeeze play. If you look at every other factor and just realize that it is Polestar, then yes, you realize that they have nothing up their sleeve, no surprise catalyst, because that is going to be what really pushes shorts to return some shares. So all in all, it is a very crappy scenario. And while I'm actually have this up, so like I said, this is the ownership right now for Polestar. There hasn't been even any analyst rating. So last one was done about 11 days ago, $2 sell rating. That was done by Dan Levy, Barclays. And yeah, 42% success rating. Every analyst, for the most part, that covers EVs has a very bad rating. But still, I think even just coming from this standpoint, just nobody is interested in Polestar. And I have been monitoring just to see if any analysts have been changing anything for their upcoming Q1 earnings, just for estimates, earnings per share, revenue, things along those lines. And there hasn't been anything whatsoever. So I'll keep monitoring this just to see if there is any changes. But for right now, It looks like everyone is just waiting for Polestar just to maybe hit that $1 mark, or maybe for their upcoming earnings so they can rationalize those poor numbers. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But moving on though, going over options, even though the market's just been open about half an hour or something like that, $14,000 in calls, 48,000 in puts. Sentiment wise, most of the volume being done is just to collect the premiums. So 39% of all the options being done are neutral. So kind of a unique circumstance, but still, once again, you're seeing no real optimism, despite it being very close to the all-time 52-week low for Polestar. Not much options, like I said, for calls, just oddly some being purchased at the 250 strike price for January 2025. But aside from that, nothing much. And then for puts, nothing whatsoever. And these are some of the transactions that have occurred on the secondary market above $100,000. So this once again does prove that big money just is not really interested in Polestar. Last transaction was done on the 19th, and prior to that was the 15th. And dark pool though, dark pool is linked to shorting more common than not, and large institutions. But even in that regard, this exchange is very, very quiet. But just to give you a good overview of some of the strong support and resistance points with Polestar right now at $1.31, it is below this S2. So currently trading between this S3 and this S2. No doubtably the rest of the day it is going to be kind of flirting with this S2, but you can kind of see virtually that Polestar is staring off of a virtual cliff, because this is the cliff that might be the deciding factor that does destroy them. Because if it gets down to $1.07, then this is where you might see shorts start to really increase their position. Like I said, shorts have been a big part in Polestar going down, but they have been more so swing trading it, lack of institutions owning it. So they might actually increase it to maybe higher than 11%. Just to give you a good overview, like Lucid itself is at 33% short interest. So ultimately, if it does break below this and stays there, then this is where it could easily get to that $1 mark, do the whole reverse stock split, and that's where you kickstart the death spiral. So it is a very unfortunate scenario. Hopefully some institutions find some value in Polestar, and I have brought that up time and time again, just looking over here at their PS ratio. So this is Enbridge, so just pulling up a good old Polestar. So that the multiples, and you can kind of see just looking at the PS ratio, it is 1 right now, and the future is 0.7. So nobody is anticipating any optimism for the foreseeable future for Polestar, and you can see that based on this. So it's just a very unfortunate scenario, and I've said that time and time again. I think initially there was a lot of high hopes for Polestar. Just even myself, I did not anticipate Polestar to go down this much and this lack of interest. So I don't know, there must be some kryptonite or some bad omen that is kind of following Polestar, because logically this just doesn't make sense, especially considering a lot of institutions are scouring the market for value plays. So it's kind of weird to see that Polestar is getting often enough overlooked. I'm not really sure why, but on the actual chart itself, so it is lower percentile of the Bollinger Band. It is considered very oversold. So stochastic is at 15, no defined trend. A number of retail investors over the last couple of trading days haven't really done all that much. So maybe they're waiting for a good piece of news. I'm not really sure. So if you are one of those individuals that have been buying or averaging down, give yourself a shout out in the comments below. And do you think that $1 is going to be hit sooner rather than later? And do you think that they're going to go down the whole reverse stock split territory? What's your thoughts on all that? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And one final thing, I have been sharing this. So obviously Interactive Brokers has a lot of good information on here, such as even latest Morningstar reports, analyst ratings, everything under the sun. If you are looking for all of this to be completely free, take a look at Interactive Brokers in the description below. And also I'll put the link in the comments as well. So with all that said, I appreciate all of you watching, and hopefully things do get better sooner rather than later for Polestar. So let me know your thoughts. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.